Welcome to Xhibition, an Xbox podcast, episode number 49. My name is Samuel Adams, and this is a weekly show dedicated entirely to the world of Xbox, bringing you everything you need to know to keep you, the Xbox fan, in the loop. So, if you're new here and you enjoy the show, you like what you see or what you hear, add the show to your podcast feed of choice, subscribe on YouTube, and get it delivered right to you each and every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. But we have a very big show today because as the summer season heats up, both literally in terms of temperature, because it is getting a little toasty here in North Carolina, and in terms of gaming announcements, we now have the Xbox Showcase dates for 2022. And let me tell you, I love a good showcase. On top of that, we have some more acquisition rumors. We have the official numbers for Xbox's most recent financial report, which are looking very good, and we'll touch on those briefly and what it kind of means in the world of Microsoft and Xbox in general. But on top of that, we also have plenty of new games coming to Game Pass as well, some of which were surprises this week, and pretty big surprises at that. Additionally, some new rumors are suggesting some pretty big games could be making their way to EA Play very soon, so you should have a lot to play in the months ahead. But in general, great energy, really enjoying what we're bringing to today's show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. It is that time of year once again. The temperatures are rising, the news is dropping, and Xbox is hosting their Xbox and Bethesda Games Showcase on June the 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. This news comes from Will Tuttle, the Xbox Wire editor-in-chief, who writes, "Today we are excited to announce that the Xbox and Bethesda Games Showcase will stream on Sunday, June 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. This show will feature amazing titles coming from Xbox Game Studios, Bethesda, and our partners around the world. The Xbox and Bethesda Games Showcase will include everything you need to know about the diverse lineup of games coming soon to the Xbox ecosystem, including upcoming releases to Xbox Game Pass on Xbox and PC. The Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase will be streamed on a variety of outlets in over 30 languages, and you can choose where you want to tune in from, with the options being YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and even TikTok. We'll see you on Sunday, June 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time." So first and foremost, I'm always pumped about this season because not only does it give you a look at what's coming for the remainder of the year, but it also gives you a look at 2023, 2024, and beyond. And that's incredibly exciting to hypothesize and to discuss the big wins, the big losses, what needs to be improved, what's exciting, what's not. I just love the conversations that I see in podcasts, that I see on social media, that I see on Reddit. It's just a really, really exciting time of the year, and so I can't help but be pumped about this. But outside of that, for this year in particular, I'm excited to see updates on games that we might have seen last year, but have not heard much about since. The biggest one for me personally being Avowed. I want to learn more about that game, and I really hope they have more to share, because that's one of my most anticipated games. It very well could be the next Skyrim for me, if everything does play out well. So very excited to learn more about what they are working on with that one. But outside of that, I need to be able to look ahead in 2022 in particular and say this is what I can expect to play. Because PlayStation has a solid lineup coming. I mean, you did have Horizon at the beginning of the year. You have supposedly God of War towards the end of the year. I'm still betting that one gets delayed. But those are two big Goliaths on top of Gran Turismo that are really winning in that regard in terms of exclusives. This year, we haven't really seen that many big exclusives. The biggest win for Xbox continues to be Game Pass. And so, my biggest takeaway that I want from the Xbox and Bethesda Showcase in a few weeks is to be able to, when someone comes to me and says, "Hey Sam, what games are coming to Xbox this year?" I want to say this, and these are when they are all coming. I want dates, I want gameplay, I want reasons to be excited. And I do think that I am going to get that. I also want surprises that I never would have expected. But in particular, in terms of dates, in terms of games, I want some Hellblade news. I want some Starfield news, of course. And most importantly, I want some Starfield gameplay. That's what we really need to see. And I do think that is where you're going to be seeing this Personally, I think that thematically, just looking at this promotional material, definitely gives off the Starfield energy. That's just my 2 cents on that one. But in terms of the games, that's pretty much what I am expecting to see. And on top of those two, I also expect to see some Forza Motorsport. I'm curious as to how big that one is going to do in terms of numbers, or I should say how big that one is going to be in terms of numbers. Will it be able to compete with Gran Turismo and be on that same level? Because it's very convenient for Microsoft to have a big racing simulator coming out in the same year that Sony releases pretty much what is a hallmark of the PlayStation brand. And so looking forward to seeing those two go head to head. Maybe some Digital Foundry comparisons could be coming because of course, when Gran Turismo launched, it was graphically ridiculed a lot in the community, and for good reason. As compared to Forza Horizon 5, which is different in nature, Gran Turismo did not have that same level of fidelity. And they also kind of beat around the bush with how the game looked, for lack of a better term, by specifically focusing on fidelity whenever you are in the 4K quality mode, or if you are taking a screenshot, it transitions from performance into quality, and you do have higher resolutions, but then when you go back to gameplay, everything kind of degrades after that. So, not a big fan of the way Gran Turismo looked, but can Forza Motorsport match that level of quality? We will have to see. Outside of specific game announcements, I want to see Game Pass absolutely fill up. I want to see immediate releases where it's a surprise drop immediately after the event. I want to learn more about what games are coming day and date to Game Pass, third-party involvement. Would love to see more about this Ubisoft deal that we've seen talked about in recent months, where you see more Ubisoft games like Assassin's Creed Origins making their way onto the service. Will that partnership continue to evolve and grow? Those are the kind of news pieces that I'm really looking forward to. Now, in terms of legitimate predictions, I know there are a ton of podcasts out there that are actually writing them down, making firm, I believe this is going to happen statements. I'm not going to be the one to do that because I'm more so a fan that just gets excited about the prospect of seeing cool stuff rather than trying to guess exactly what it is. But I will say, I think that Microsoft has a great opportunity here to really establish the cloud in a big way by announcing another tier of Xbox Game Pass. And I think that's something they should absolutely embrace because Xbox Game Pass right now is performing incredibly well from what we've been told by Phil Spencer and other teams at Xbox, but it could do even better if it became more affordable for those that might not necessarily want the console or the PC experience, but just want to be on the cloud. For me, I think a service between $5 and $7.99 per month could be a great opportunity to tap into those that just want to play on mobile, and even more so, tap into that hardware opportunity and make something that is a very affordable streaming stick like a Chromecast to be able to just pull in Xbox Cloud games, sync with a Xbox controller, and maybe even reduce the latency even further depending on how that tech could work, and bundle all of that together for $50 or $60. Let's say $79.99 for an Xbox controller and the streaming stick. That would be the perfect solution for the casual audience, or for those that might travel a lot, could be a great companion for the Xbox Series X. So, I think what we have here is a crossroads where you see GeForce Now getting involved in streaming. You see Google Stadia not performing that well, but still hanging in there in the streaming world. You see Amazon getting involved with Luna. And while I never think that this is going to be the go-to way that people play their games, I do think that cloud gaming is going to stick around for the foreseeable future until the infrastructure globally is able to support it being the main way that people experience games. And so giving people the option of how to play is something that is always at the heart of what Xbox brings. Just looking at Game Pass, you can subscribe to console if you would like. You can subscribe to Ultimate and play on console and PC, or you can forego the subscriptions altogether and just buy your games. It's at the heart of what Xbox is doing. And so giving players that choice of buying console, playing on a PC, and just buying Xbox games, subscribing to a service that leverages the cloud and you can play on a phone, whatever you want to do, as long as you are involved in the ecosystem, that's what they care about. And so I would love to see some kind of bundle announced, a hardware initiative announced, and maybe even learn more about some cloud exclusive games. I know that's something that is being discussed actively and that are in development right now. And so that could potentially be something we see debut alongside a new piece of streaming hardware or a new tier of Xbox Game Pass. Also, I fully expect to see the family Game Pass announcement. I think that's kind of a given at this point, and it's a brilliant idea to be able to say for $25 a month, give 3 players in your household access to Xbox Game Pass. I think that is a shoo-in for the Bethesda and Xbox Games Showcase. So, with all of my rambling aside, you can tune in on Sunday, June 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you want to tune in, and see all of the biggest news. And of course, whenever that week's episode of Xhibition rolls around, we will break it all down. We'll see what happens. Who knows? I don't know what's going on that weekend for me personally, but maybe we will postpone the Saturday recording session, record on Sunday, and put that bad boy out a little bit later. We'll have to see. I know that competes with a lot of what other bigger Xbox podcasts are doing, but hey, we'll play it by ear and see what comes. Either way, very excited to dig deeper into this whenever the announcements come rolling down the pike. This week we got some very big sales numbers in, and Xbox had its best March sales month on record in the United States. And we'll talk more about what this means in general, but this news comes from Tom Ivan over at VGC, who writes, according to the latest monthly sales report from market research firm NPD Group, Xbox outperformed its previous sales highs set in March 2011 and in March 2014 for units and dollars respectively. Xbox Series X and S was the best-selling console platform of both March 2020 and the first quarter in dollars, while Switch led unit sales in March and during the first 3 months of the year. Xbox Series sales in Europe were higher than those of PS5 for the first time in February, and Xbox Series X and S were the top-selling consoles in the UK in March. While Xbox Series X and S and PS5 have been available for nearly 18 months, both continue to suffer from stock issues as a result of a global chip shortage, although in recent months Microsoft's consoles have been more readily available than Sony's. Last week, Xbox Games marketing general manager Aaron Greenberg endorsed VG Charts figures suggesting Xbox Series X and S consoles have sold 13.87 million units in 17 months compared to 9.38 million Xbox 360 consoles at the same stage of that console's life cycle. So, in short, Xbox hardware is just killing it, just freaking killing it. Now, when it comes to smashing and dominating the PlayStation market or the Nintendo market, I don't think that that can be really said. I think that Xbox is more readily available right now. And that is something that we have seen just by general post on social media, where when people go to the store, you generally are able to find an Xbox Series S at the very least. I've seen Xbox Series X consoles out in the wild. To date, I have yet to see a PlayStation 5 sitting on a store shelf ready to be bought. That is not something that I have seen. Now, I have seen them available online. I personally have not bought one because there aren't really games that are calling to me in that way that I feel compelled to drop $500 on another box for my living room. But I think the availability is certainly playing into this in a very, very big way. Even with availability to the side, we are talking about potentially, again unconfirmed, but Aaron Greenberg signed off on it, so hey, partially confirmed, Xbox Series X and S getting 13.87 million units sold. On top of that, you have that compared to the Xbox 360 metrics of 9.38 million units. So, the Xbox 360 is legendary. When it comes to 360 versus PS3, that console dominated. And so while the tables have changed drastically since that specific console generation, the fact that the Xbox Series X and S is selling so incredibly well, even with the chip shortage, likely means that these sales numbers are compressed even further because of availability constraints of the Xbox Series X and S. I think that is going to be alleviated in the next few months just because I've seen much broader availability. I've seen it at Best Buy, at Target, from Microsoft directly. I think it's been up for more than 24 hours at this point, where you can log on and just buy one outright without much of an issue. That kind of availability is going to make a big change in these sales numbers. Now, the big question is, if there were no chip shortages and hardware was abundantly available, how would the Xbox 360, the Xbox Series X and S be doing in comparison to the PlayStation 5 and the Nintendo Switch? And I think that the Nintendo Switch would be sitting comfortably at second place. I think that Xbox might still tail that, just based on my pure instinct and the broad appeal of the Nintendo Switch console and its affordability. But to see Xbox catching up in such a big way and to not be trailing by a horrendous amount is something that I think signals a general positive reception of the moves that Xbox is making. And they are making some incredible moves. I mean, in terms of hardware quality, in terms of experiences, the subscription offerings, I think this is really going to be a generation that marks a dramatic shift for Xbox back towards the positive consumer reception that it lost so much ground on in the Xbox One generation, and it struggled to regain towards the end of that last generation. Now, in tangent to this piece of news, I did want to point out one of the biggest problems Xbox is having right now, and those are the March 2022 US top 20 video games. You have number 1, Elden Ring, number 2, Gran Turismo 7, number 3, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, number 4, MLB The Show 22, number 5, Horizon 2 Forbidden West, number 6, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and the list continues to go on. The biggest takeaway here is that out of all of these games, none of them are Xbox exclusives. And while that's not necessarily a big issue right now, it would be nice to see Xbox putting up more exclusives. It would be nice to see more Xbox games that can only be played there making those charts in that way, because you see Sony and Nintendo continuing to crush it in that specific way. So if they want to compete for players' dollars and their time and their mind share, you're going to have to start putting out more high-quality AAA Xbox exclusives at a click that's faster than what's being put out right now. And I think they're working on it. I think that much like the team at 343 is building a structure to support Halo content long term, I think Xbox is setting up a cadence of development so that they can pump out at least one big AAA game every quarter, which I believe is their goal. So again, we'll have to wait and see, but very exciting times, and Xbox is certainly regaining a lot of lost ground from the Xbox One generation and making a very, very solid debut in the first 18 months of the new generation of consoles. Jumping over to some acquisition rumors, Warner Bros. May reportedly sell their gaming studios, with Microsoft, Electronic Arts, Sony, and Take-Two all being interested parties. This news comes from Comic Book Gaming's Cade Onder, who writes, Warner Bros. Discovery is reportedly planning to sell off some of its gaming studios and IPs to major players in the industry. This is not the first time this rumor has come about. In the summer of 2020, there were rumblings that Warner Bros. Was considering selling some of its gaming divisions off, and at that time it was rumored that Xbox was interested in making a deal with Warner Bros. Of course, nothing came of it, but it's not particularly surprising that Microsoft was willing to reach into its deep pockets to acquire some of Warner Bros.' property. It sounds like this could potentially materialize as a reality now. So again, the interested parties here are Microsoft, Sony, Electronic Arts, and Take-Two. Tencent and NetEase as well are involved in the conversations, and PUBG Corp, according to Imran Khan, who is a very notable gaming reporter. Now, he writes on Twitter, quote, couldn't get enough confirmation to actually write a post about it, but hearing a decent bit of chatter this week about Warner Bros. Discovery shopping their game development studios around. Interested parties include EA, Take-Two, Microsoft, Sony, Tencent, NetEase, and PUBG Corp. WBD wants to sell studios and license IP, supposedly. So, the big question here is who is going to gobble them up if this does in fact happen. And some context here, Warner Brothers Discovery just went through a big merger. Of course, as the name suggests, Warner Brothers and Discovery became one company, and you see a lot of changes in terms of the content they are planning. A lot of big changes in the cinematic universe as well for DC. They want to become more like Marvel, as they should, because Marvel is killing it, and DC movies, aside from Joker and Batman, not really hitting on too much. You also see a lot of TV shows getting canceled as well. But this is not a broader entertainment show. This is an Xbox show. And so it's not shocking to see them trying to consolidate their investments, because owning game studios in a way are investments for these entities. They want to be able to create IP that strengthen existing IP occasionally, and then you just continue to have that churn and burn of pumping out games, growing fan bases, pumping out new games, making a movie, that kind of thing. And so being able to sell these off is going to consolidate their efforts. It's going to streamline the business. And it could be good for them as a company. Now, the big question is, of course, you have Mortal Kombat involved in here, and you have Sony getting pretty invested in the fighting world. I think it could make sense for them to acquire that specific IP. Now, again, the question is, will Warner Brothers Discovery sell off individual IP? That is yet to be determined. And of course, we haven't heard anything that is official, just Imran Khan reporting on this as being something that could potentially be happening. So a lot of ifs and a lot of content and questions are still up in the air of where things could land. But I don't think that Microsoft is going to become involved in this deal because of the Activision-Blizzard stuff that is continuing to take their attention. We saw, and we'll talk about it in a moment, the approval of that deal from shareholders earlier this week, but the FTC still has to approve, and that's not going to close until June 2023. So depending on when and where these talks are taking place, I think that that could bar Microsoft from really being a big player unless they convince Warner Brothers Discovery to hold off. And again, that assumes that Warner Brothers Discovery is going to be invested or interested to begin with. So this is kind of a wait and see story. I'll keep you guys in the loop on it, but I did want to mention it because things like this are incredibly interesting to me as we see this industry-wide consolidation of who owns what. And it really is coming down to just a small handful of people that are owning all of these companies and ultimately the games that we play. Up for debate if that's good or not. I personally don't mind it that much because I haven't seen a huge impact in terms of the gamers themselves, but there's a lot to be considered here, like company culture, like studio culture specifically when it comes to treatment of workers and fairness. A lot of that kind of conversation still needs to be had. Now, Ubisoft was also in the news lately for potentially wanting to be acquired, and Skull and Bones is coming from Ubisoft soon, TM, because Skull and Bones has leaked in a big way and Ubisoft has responded. We have seen full gameplay footage from a supposed playtest that is going on right now. Of course, if you ever get into a playtest and you are a content creator, generally they say, hey, don't show this off. Don't talk about it. This game doesn't exist. Just play it and let us know what you think. That does not seem to be the case here because it was posted on Streamable. Obviously, I'm not going to post anything here. In fact, I think this link has already been taken down by Ubisoft, but the official Skull and Bones Twitter account has replied and said, keep your eyes on the horizon. And of course, you do have this ship that is sailing through the seas right there. Just a quick little snippet. And then you have Skull and Bones, a Ubisoft original. Stay tuned. So it's likely something you will be seeing later this summer. For me, just the quick gameplay clip looks fine. The biggest thing with Skull and Bones is that this game has been in development for so long. It has been delayed, potentially canceled. It has been restarted. It has just been a painful experience to get this thing out. And so what I want from it is for it to really capture the magic of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, and specifically the ship portion of that. I want great ship combat. And according to this report, the video also reveals that players will have their reputation tracked through an infamy scale that they can grow by taking on contracts with rewards for succeeding and penalties for coming up short. Users can also take part in world events and plunder treasure chests to gain infamy, What's more, the video reveals some of the character creation and customization options available to players, as well as the systems that call on players to manage their ship health and crew morale when at sea. So, in general, players can disembark their ship at a place called St. Anne, where they can craft new ships and equipment, collect provisions, take on contracts, and socialize with other human players, according to the video. So, with all of that gameplay detail being shared, it has the potential to be something cool, but the gameplay is what really matters. If these ship battles can capture the same excitement and kind of cycle that the Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag ship battles and ship portions could, then I think it definitely has a chance. I'm not holding my breath on this one, because if there's one thing I've learned from Ubisoft games in the last few years, it's that they're probably not as good as you think they're going to be. Far Cry 6, for example, fine game, I suppose. Rainbow Six Extraction, fine game once again, but they're just not really what I personally wanted. And you see the same thing with kind of The Division 2, where it was met fairly well. I think that's the best way to describe recent Ubisoft games, is that they're all fairly well received. Nothing crazy, nothing blowing anybody's mind, but they're just kind of there. And I think that's exactly what Skull and Bones is going to be. Holding out hope, though. Definitely want to dive into the golden age of piracy, but we will have to wait and see. Hopefully we will get some news later in the summer. Jumping back to some news I touched on just a couple of minutes ago, Activision-Blizzard stockholders have approved the proposed Microsoft buyout, with more than 98% of the shareholders voting at the special meeting in favor for the proposed transaction. Now, just to be clear, there are still regulatory approvals that have to be gone through before this is officially in the books, signed, sealed, and delivered. So I saw a couple of people commenting on threads on Reddit and Twitter. I thought this was done. This is old news. No, this is just really starting to hit its stride. And this was kind of expected, because you see Activision really struggling in the past few years in terms of the work company culture, in terms of leadership under Bobby Kotick, who needs to be thrown out of the company as soon as it is acquired, or even if it's not. You just give him the golden parachute if you have to and get him out of there. Make things better. But you also see, from a actual revenue perspective, a huge decline. You see Call of Duty Vanguard plummeting in popularity. It's one of the lowest engaged games in the Call of Duty franchise history. And in general, engagement in games is continuing to go down for Activision Blizzard. So you see Diablo Immortal on the horizon. I think next week you see World of Warcraft getting a mobile game announcement. So that could potentially bolster some engagement numbers. But outside of that, you have Diablo 4 coming up that needs to be good. It really needs to be good. And then you also have Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which is a big deal that we'll talk about more in a moment. But all of those elements are positive for Activision Blizzard in terms of the games that are coming out, but it's very hard to not look at the negativity. And so for shareholders, seeing the controversies, seeing the huge workplace culture issues, seeing the engagement in games and sales continuing to decline year over year, well, probably encouraging to go ahead and say, hey, what about that big tech company that can come and just make all this go away and you don't have to deal with it anymore? Kind of makes sense for them to say, okay, you take over, you make it better, take the money and run. Like, that kind of situation is how I personally perceive the stockholders and their assessment of the situation. So 98% approved. I personally think that this is still going to go through. And I've seen a lot of talk online lately of the market doesn't think that this deal is going to close. And quite frankly, it very well could not close. Still totally up in the air, and we've seen huge deals also backed out of before, not necessarily by Microsoft, but mergers fall apart all the time and acquisitions fall apart all the time. And if that is the case, then will I be disappointed as an Xbox fan? Not really, because I still get to play the games either way. What I would be disappointed in if this deal falls through is the fact that I think that a Microsoft acquisition is the best option for the company culture situation and for overall quality. I think that being able to be under that Microsoft umbrella might take away some of that pressure to have such a deep monetization system in games that I used to love, like Call of Duty, and make things a little less intricate in that way, to where we could focus on high quality games once again. I think that's the biggest deal for me in terms of why the Activision-Blizzard acquisition matters. Now, that could all be totally false, and who knows what will actually change under Microsoft, but I don't really care one way or another if they do get acquired. Huge deal for the Xbox fan in me, but again, not really going to change much if the company itself stays pretty much on the same path. So we'll just have to wait and see on that one. But very exciting times because Infinity Ward has officially unveiled Modern Warfare 2, at least its logo. That's pretty much all we got this week. You can see the official tweet here, hashtag Modern Warfare 2, and there is the logo. I must admit, it does look very cool. And you can see this is actually a very, very highly engaged tweet, 345.1 thousand likes with 16.1 thousand quote tweets and 47,000 retweets. According to Benji Sales, who was on the Kinda Funny Xcast earlier this week, this is actually the highest engaged Call of Duty tweet of all time. So if that's any precursor to how the game itself is going to perform, I think that they are definitely going to have a hit on their hands here. And Modern Warfare in general is such a nostalgic experience for so many people, including myself. This is one of those Call of Duty games that I grew up on. I mean, I remember 2009, it was the go-to game for me all the way until Black Ops came out. And it just was and is one of my favorites of all time. I did want to point out this article from Kotaku, though. Activision announces the 47th Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, with Roman numerals II, which is the 10th Modern Warfare game. So the article goes into more about how many Call of Duty games there have been and et cetera, et cetera. But I must say, it would be nice to see something new. I would love to see a new FPS into the ring, and of course you have some that are trying to break new ground. But in terms of the arcade shooting style of Call of Duty, few games are able to compete just because of the popularity of the IP. And that, of course, feeds into the fact that there have been 47 of these as of this fall. So all of the repetitive combat and generally recycled content to the side, I can't help but be a little bit excited for Modern Warfare 2. And that's coming from someone who played Black Ops Cold War, played a little bit of Vanguard in the beta weekends and the free-to-play weekends, but in general, I've just fallen off of Call of Duty, probably because I don't have that same passion for the franchise anymore. It feels very hollow to me. So we will see if Modern Warfare 2 is able to regain that spark in my heart. But 2019's Modern Warfare was the last one that I spent a significant amount of time with, and it was a very fun game with a really, really good campaign. So I'm looking forward to learning more about the campaign in particular. But even more so, after the Activision-Blizzard merger finally closes, I look forward to seeing this one land on Game Pass. That's probably when you're going to be seeing me jump on board, but we'll just have to wait and see what the reviews say. Hopefully it is a pretty good one, and for me, Infinity Ward is still the OG Call of Duty resource. Treyarch is good with Black Ops, but the games that I like, those come from Infinity Ward. Just my 2 cents. To round out today's show, let's talk about some new games that are available on Xbox Game Pass today, some that are coming soon, some that are rumored, and of course, some games with gold for May of 2022. First and foremost, surprise, NBA 2K22 is now available on Xbox Game Pass. You can see the reporting here from Pure Xbox, but the title really says it all. If you want to jump on, shoot some hoops, you absolutely can. Jump in to the most recent NBA 2K game. But on top of that, coming soon, we also have This War of Mine Final Cut jumping into the service very soon. Now, this is a title that is very near and dear to a lot of people's hearts because it is a fantastic depiction of what anti-war messaging can do in the gaming space. It really does put the players right in the thick of being a civilian in an active war zone. And I think that this game in particular is very relevant right now because of what's happening in the Ukraine, or I should say Ukraine. Fun fact, it is not the Ukraine. That's very offensive to that group of people. So Ukraine, still trying to get used to that myself, learned that a couple of weeks ago, so I'm sharing with you guys here today. But 11-Bit Studios' celebrated anti-war game This War of Mine is getting revamped and expanded for a re-release on modern consoles, writes Marcus Stewart over at Game Informer. Dubbed the Final Cut, The game, in which players manage a party of civilians surviving in a war-torn city, is coming to PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, including Xbox Game Pass, on May the 10th. It boasts a 4K resolution and a readjusted UI. Content-wise, it includes the locations from the base game and introduces a new character, quests, and events. There's also some DLC, This War of Mine Stories, and that's available for purchase separately on PS5 and Series X. You can also buy the complete edition with a bundle of Final Cut and the stories if you want everything. Now, I will say I picked this up recently on the Nintendo Switch, not the Final Cut, obviously, but the complete edition, I believe. There was a couple of bucks, and all of the proceeds from that went to Ukraine and those that are struggling to find a new way to live as their country becomes embroiled in this pointless war. So, if you want to donate, you absolutely can, and you can join their causes. Lots to say there. And of course, you can see the official press release from the CEO of the company down below. So to be able to spread the anti-war message, I think is incredibly important. And of course, Game Pass helps amplify that in a very, very big way. And on top of that, the game is highly regarded as a great experience. So looking forward to diving into that one myself. But potentially coming soon, unconfirmed, are FIFA 22 and Battlefield 2042. This comes after the UI within the Xbox store itself updated and showed a Game Pass logo for both of these games. Now, it is worth noting this is pretty much standard practice for EA Play, which of course is looped into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. And they write here on Eurogamer, as FIFA 22 was released in October 2021 and Battlefield 2042 in November, this means both games will only be around 6 months old should they indeed be joining Microsoft's library of games soon. So, with all of that being taken into consideration, I definitely think that this is going to be a big debut, potentially one of those announcements that comes around the Xbox and Bethesda Games Showcase. Just doing some math, it looks like November is whenever Battlefield came out, so December, January, February, March, April, May could be something that comes ahead of the Xbox and Bethesda Games Showcase. We will just have to wait and see. FIFA 22 seems kind of like a shoo-in in the same way that NBA 2K dropped on the service, so I'm expecting both of these, and for the latter in particular, Battlefield 2042. If you've been a long-time listener of the podcast, you know this is a game that is near and dear to my heart. I still play it today. Yes, I know it has issues. Yes, I know it's not great, but man, do I love this thing. I hope that Xbox Game Pass gives players the opportunity to dive into it and enjoy it in a way that brings more players back into the fold and potentially can help support it long term and encourage the team at EA to make it better because they have improved it in a huge way. I posted some clips on Twitter earlier this week of me getting some pretty sick sniper shots, and it is a game that I keep coming back to do the weeklies at the very least, which generally take an hour or so. And so it's a great game for me to keep jumping back into, even though it may not be of the highest quality, but I would love to see it come to Game Pass so that more people can potentially dive in, give it a shot, and see if it's something they might be interested in. So stay tuned. Hopefully we will get some news on this in the weeks ahead, but that timeline does add up indeed. But between now and then, you could dive into some new games with gold, with $59.96 in value and 3,250 gamer score to earn. We have Yoku's Island Express, The Inner World, The Last Wind Monk, Hydro Thunder Hurricane, and Viva Pinata Party Animals, all dropping for the month of May. Of course, as is tradition, the release times and dates are staggered for these. Yoku's Island Express is able to be claimed May 1st through the 31st, May 16th to June 15th. You get The Inner World, The Last Wind Monk, Hydro Thunder Hurricane May 1st to May 15th, and Viva Pinata Party Animals are coming May 16th through the 31st of May. This is the best games with gold month that I've seen in quite some time. Now, people over on Reddit are mad because Hydro Thunder Hurricane has been a repeat in the games with gold lineup multiple times. I think I saw 3 times, definitely 2, maybe 3. So that is something to consider when you're assessing the value of this for longtime subscribers. But for me, it's a great addition because Yoku's Island Express is included here. Great little pinball-esque game that I would highly recommend for fans of that genre. And of course, Viva Pinata Party Animals. Hey, why not? Sure, throw it in there. And so to be able to see this kind of month for May, I think is a good move in the right direction. By no means is this exceeding anyone's expectations, so we'll have to wait and see. In fact, maybe we'll throw that into the prediction slot for the Xbox Bethesda Showcase. Maybe they consolidate, get rid of games with gold, and bundle it all into Game Pass. We'll have to wait and see for that one. But if you want to pick up any of these games, again, they are free for you with your Xbox Game Pass Ultimate or your Xbox Live Gold subscription, so dive in, give them a shot. But that wraps up this week's episode of Xhibition, an Xbox podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, drop me a like down below and let me know what you are looking forward to with the Xbox and Bethesda Games Showcase coming up on June the 12th. I'd love to hear what you're looking forward to, what you expect to see, what you hope to see and dream to see. Let me know in the comment section on YouTube or hit me up on Twitter at JamPackSam. Would love to see you hit that reply button. But until next week, you guys have a fantastic one. I'll talk to you soon, and keep on playing.